My parents stole my $250,000 in savings. My father sneered. Thanks for your naivete. Your brother's future is secured. I couldn't contain the laughter because the money they took was, actually, thank you for being here with me today. I hope you are having a wonderful day wherever you are. I'd love for you to share in the comments what city or country you're watching from and what time it is there now. Let's begin our story together. The aroma of my small apartment used to be a comforting, if slightly mundane, blend of old paperbacks and the faint metallic tang of early morning coffee. For 10 years, it had been the backdrop to a singular, unwavering focus, building a future. That future was encapsulated in a number, an ever-growing figure in my online savings account, $250,000. It was $250,000, scraped together penny by penny, tough decision after tough decision. Each brown bag lunch eaten alone at my desk while colleagues went out, each worn pair of shoes stretched another season, each tempting vacation deferred, each extra freelance project crammed into already overflowing weekends. It all added up to that number. It was more than money. It was the physical manifestation of my self-reliance, my discipline, my quiet ambition. It was the down payment on the sturdy, simple house with a small patch of lawn I browsed online listings for, picturing evenings on the porch, a place where I could finally put down roots that were truly my own. It was, quite simply, my independence. My parents, bless their hearts, always had an abundance of unsolicited opinions about my finances. It wasn't the gentle guidance of a seasoned investor. It was a constant, watchful critique, thinly veiled as concern. Are you sure that savings account is the best place for your money, Michael? My mother would ask during our mandatory Sunday night calls, her voice laced with that particular brand of parental anxiety that always felt more like judgment. Inflation, you know, and housing prices keep going up. Perhaps you should consider putting some of that capital to work. Perhaps helping David get his project off the ground. David, my younger brother, the son around whom the entire familial solar system seemed to revolve. His needs were paramount, his potential limitless, his every move a cause for fanfare and, more often than not, financial outlay. College tuition required significant parental sacrifice, a fact trumpeted to every relative and family friend. David's brilliant, vaguely defined startup idea, promising to revolutionize, well, something, involved more sacrifice, more pronouncements of his inevitable world-dominating success. My own quiet achievements, graduating college debt-free thanks to scholarships and part-time jobs, securing a stable engineering position, steadily growing my savings, were met with a nod, a perfunctory, "That's nice, Michael," before the conversation inevitably circled back to David's latest grant application, his networking opportunity. My role was clear, the reliable one, the quiet one, the support system expected to contribute without requiring acknowledgement or, God forbid, reciprocal support. I was the solid, invisible foundation upon which they built, never realizing they saw me merely as expendable raw material. My blind spot was a vast, echoing cavern. I truly believe their subtle manipulations, their constant suggestions, their blatant favoritism toward David were just clumsy expressions of love, fumbling attempts to guide their quiet son. I mistook their ingrained need for control for genuine care, their expectation of my unwavering support for a healthy model of family unity. Their house on Maple Lane, where I grew up, was a shrine to manufactured perfection. The lawn was perpetually manicured, the sofa cushions plumped to a defiant perfection, the family photos on the mantelpiece strategically arranged to showcase achievements. Even as a child, I sensed the performance simmering beneath the surface. The air inside always smelled faintly of my mother's signature cloying floral air freshener, an almost aggressive attempt to mask any less than perfect scent. My father's voice, a low, resonant rumble, could shut down any conversation that veered into uncomfortable territory, steering everyone back to safe, superficial topics or, predictably, to David's latest triumph. The savings account itself was a relic of simpler times, or perhaps a testament to my naivete. I'd opened it in high school, and it remained linked to my parents' address for paper statements long after I moved out. It was just one of those administrative details I never got around to changing. More significantly, I had given them the online login information years ago. I barely remembered why now. Perhaps they needed to transfer a small sum for something trivial, a shared expense, or maybe they'd simply insisted on helping me set up online access and I'd acquiesced, trusting implicitly. It was a one-off thing, a fleeting moment of parental convenience or assistance I never dreamed could be weaponized. It simply felt normal. Family shared. No, my family. The first sign, looking back, was so subtle it was almost a ghost. My work laptop, a relatively new and powerful machine I depended on daily, began to slow down. Programs froze, files took agonizing seconds to open, websites spun endlessly before loading. It felt like dragging a heavy weight through mud. I ran virus scans, deleted old programs, optimized storage, everything I knew to do. But nothing helped. The performance issues persisted, a constant, nagging drag on my productivity. It was like a tiny, persistent itch I couldn't scratch, a minor frustration I dismissed as impending hardware failure. Then came the questions, sharper, more invasive, delivered with that same saccharine coating of concern. Are you really still planning on buying that house next year, Michael? Prices are astronomical now, you know. Are you absolutely sure your savings are keeping pace? Perhaps you should reconsider your strategy. My mother's voice on the phone, sweet but probing, felt like tiny needles pricking my skin. A vague, unsettling feeling would twist in my stomach during those calls, a sense of being overly scrutinized, my plans somehow open to public commentary and judgment. I try to brush it off, attribute it to my own stress over the big purchase. One night, troubleshooting the relentless computer slowdown, I opened the task manager. Scrolling through the list of running processes, most were familiar, system tasks or common applications. Then I saw a name I didn't recognize. It seemed innocuous at first glance, a string of technical-sounding words. A quick, cautious search on a secondary device yielded chilling results. This particular process name, or variations of it, was commonly associated with remote access and monitoring software. Software designed to log keystrokes, capture screens, access files, even activate webcams and microphones. My blood ran cold. Why would that be on my work laptop? Had I clicked a suspicious link? Downloaded something accidentally? A sickening thought, insidious and deeply unsettling, began to take shape, a dark tendril creeping in from the edges of my mind. No, they couldn't be them. The people who raised me. My parents. But the questions, the timing, the access I'd given them years ago, it all coalesced into a horrifying possibility I desperately wanted to disbelieve. My hands were visibly shaking as I navigated to my online banking portal later that night. The cursor seemed to crawl across the screen, mirroring the dread that was growing in my chest. The familiar layout loaded, the numbers I'd watched grow for a decade. My eyes scanned the main balance, expecting to see the solid six-figure sum. It wasn't there. The number was minuscule, barely enough to cover a month's rent. A choked sound escaped my throat. I clicked on the transaction history, scrolling with mounting desperation, my breath catching in ragged gasps. And there it was, stark and undeniable, a single, massive outgoing transfer dated last Tuesday. Amount, $250,000. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My chest constricted, not metaphorically, but physically, like a crushing weight settling on my sternum. It felt as if someone had wrapped barbed wire around my lungs, making each breath a jagged, painful effort. This wasn't possible. It had to be a mistake, a hack, a technical glitch. Not them. Not my parents. Not my family. That money represented 10 years of my life, my future, my dream of a safe, independent space. It was gone. Vanished. I drove to their house on Maple Lane the following afternoon. The drive was a blur, my mind racing, trying to construct a scenario where this wasn't what it seemed. The perfect facade greeted me. The meticulously pruned rose bushes, the freshly sealed driveway. The air inside was thick with the cloying artificial scent of my mother's floral spray, which now felt less like a pleasant aroma and more like a suffocating gas. David was there, sprawled on the pristine white sofa, tapping away on his tablet, looking utterly carefree. My parents sat opposite me, their initial expressions of mild surprise at my unexpected visit hardening into watchful wariness as they took in my face. I didn't bother with pleasantries. My voice was thin, strained, barely louder than a whisper, the words raked raw with terror and disbelief. My savings $250,000. It's gone. Transferred. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, a practiced gesture of shock. Oh, Michael. How awful. You were hacked. You clicked on something you shouldn't have. My father leaned forward from his armchair, his brow furrowed in a convincing display of concern. Are you sure, son? Are you reading the statement correctly? Online banking can be confusing. I pulled out my phone, forcing my trembling fingers to navigate to the transaction log. The screen felt slick in my hand. I thrust it toward them, the undeniable evidence starkly gleaming. It's right here. A single transfer, $250,000, last Tuesday, to an account I don't recognize. Their eyes scanned the screen. My mother's face, usually so carefully composed, paled visibly beneath her makeup. My father's jaw tightened, the mask of concern slipping, revealing something harder underneath. The performance was beginning to crumble, revealing the cold, calculating core beneath. Well, Michael, my father began, his voice losing its feigned sympathy, adopting that familiar authoritarian tone that brooked no argument. We facilitated a transfer for the family. Facilitated? For the family. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against bone. Facilitated? Without asking me? That's my house money. 10 years of savings, gone in an instant. How could you? My mother interjected, her voice rising in sudden, shrill indignation. Don't be dramatic, Michael. It's family money. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is family's. We helped you when you were young. We supported you. We invested in you. Invested? I whispered the word, it feeling like a betrayal in itself. You stole my down payment. You stole my future. My father stood then, drawing himself up to his full height, his voice booming slightly, filling the room with his authority. David finally looked up from his tablet, a flicker of confusion on his face, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Steal is a ridiculous word. We needed it. David's startup needed a final, significant investment to secure its future. It's about securing his future, our family's prosperity. My future was that money. My voice was stronger now, raw with pain, disbelief, and a rising, cold fury. You took everything I worked for, everything I sacrificed for. My father's lips curled into a thin smile, smug and utterly cruel. His eyes met mine, cold and triumphant. This was the moment seared into my memory, the culmination of a lifetime of subtle slights and blatant favoritism. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping again to a low, cutting tone, laced with condescension. Thank you for your naivete, Michael. Your money has now secured your brother's bright future. Some of us understand how to leverage assets for the greater good. Something inside me shattered, but not in the way they expected. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was a strange, almost detached recognition of the sheer, breathtaking arrogance, the complete and utter lack of comprehension of the reality of the situation they'd created. A strange pressure built in my chest, behind my eyes. A choked sound escaped my lips. It wasn't a sob. It was the beginning of laughter, a dark, bitter, utterly unnerving laughter that felt alien coming from my own throat. They stared at me, their faces a mixture of confusion and outrage. The smugness faltered on my father's face, replaced by irritation. For God's sake, what are you laughing at? My mother demanded, her eyes narrowed into suspicious slits. David looked visibly uncomfortable, sensing the scene spiraling beyond his comprehension. I couldn't stop the strange surge of dark amusement, mingled with a cold, hard resolve hardening in my gut. The laughter was shaky, disbelieving, almost manic. You think you took my future, I managed to say, my voice trembling but strengthening with each word. You think you won? You think you played me for a fool? I shook my head slowly, the laughter fading into a grim, unwavering smile that felt foreign on my face. You have no idea. The money you took wasn't just my savings. Not anymore. By taking it, you just sealed your own fate. That moment was the definitive turning point. The shock, the raw grief, the feeling of being utterly violated, they didn't break me. They refined me, burning away the last vestiges of blind loyalty and naive hope. They forged something new and hard in the crucible of betrayal. A cold, focused determination replaced the devastation. It wasn't just about recovering funds anymore, although that was part of it. It was about justice, about exposing the rot beneath the perfect, gleaming surface they presented to the world, and about protecting myself from the terrifying reality of what they were capable of. I walked out of their house that day, not broken, but burning with a cold, clear fire. The cloying floral air freshener clung to my clothes, a sickening reminder of the artificiality I was leaving behind. I drove back to my quiet, empty apartment, the silence amplifying the chaotic thoughts swirling in my head. I couldn't stay there, not with that software potentially still lurking, watching. I wiped my laptop clean, a necessary but almost violent act, erasing years of files, memories, digital fingerprints, ensuring no more information could be compromised. Then I packed a small bag and went to Emma's. Emma lived simply, intentionally, in a part of the city far removed from the suffocating, perfect uniformity of suburban Maple Lane. Her apartment building was older, quirky, full of character. She opened the door, took one look at my haggard, pale face, eyes wide with shock, and pulled me into a fierce, silent hug. The scent of her home was different. Old paperbacks, fresh coffee brewing, something clean and earthy that spoke of genuine living, not manufactured presentation. It smelled of safety. I told her the story, haltingly at first, the words catching in my throat, then in a torrent. The discovery of the software, the missing money, my father's cruel, sneering boast, the strange, almost uncontrollable laughter that followed. Emma listened patiently, her expression shifting from concern to disbelief to a quiet, simmering anger that mirrored my own. "Oh, Mickey," she murmured, her voice low and steady. "I always knew something wasn't right with them, the way they treated you, the David show. But this is on a whole other level." Her expertise in cybersecurity wasn't just a job. It was a deep passion, an intuitive understanding of the digital world that was utterly foreign to me. She grasped the implications of the monitoring software immediately. Keyloggers, remote access, screen captures. She muttered, her fingers already flying across the keyboard of her own clean machine. "It's not just about seeing what you're doing. It's about gaining access to accounts, to files, to sensitive personal information, especially if you were using that computer for banking or anything private." We began to investigate, working through the night, fueled by adrenaline and Emma's endless supply of strong coffee. Not on my wiped machine, but accessing records I could legally obtain, old bank statements, logs from my online accounts showing access times, anything that predated the wipe. Emma focused on tracing the $250,000 transfer. It went to a domestic account, but then, within hours, it fragmented, flowing through a series of complex, rapid transactions involving a network of shell corporations and generically named, corporate-sounding accounts. It wasn't going directly to David's startup, or to any known vendor, or even to a simple investment fund. This was textbook money laundering. This wasn't just financially toxic parents stealing from one child to fund a favored sibling. This was part of a much larger, more sophisticated criminal operation. My parents weren't just selfish and manipulative. They were career criminals running a complex financial fraud network. The money they took from me was just one small piece of their larger scheme, laundered through various accounts or used to fund their illicit activities. The revelation was a cold, hard stone settling in my stomach. Their carefully curated image, their obsession with appearances, their relentless promotion of David's success. The revelation was a cold, hard stone settling in my stomach. Their carefully curated image, their obsession with appearances, their relentless promotion of David's success. It wasn't just annoying family dysfunction. It was a carefully constructed smokescreen for something far darker and more dangerous. The weight of it was crushing. But annoying family dysfunction. It was a carefully constructed smokescreen for something far darker and more dangerous. The weight of it was crushing. But then Emma found something else. Something directly tied to the monitoring software logs she'd managed to recover through some digital wizardry I didn't fully understand. Something directly tied to the logs from the monitoring software she'd managed to recover through some digital wizardry I didn't fully understand. Logs showing which files had been remotely accessed on my computer after the software was installed. My tax documents, copies of loan applications from years ago, identity verification files I'd saved, digital scans of my driver's license, and Social Security remotely accessed on my computer after the software was installed. My tax documents, copies of loan applications from years ago, identity verification files I'd saved, digital scans of my driver's license, and social security card. They weren't just stealing my money. They were actively using my identity. My personal information, gleaned through the monitoring software they'd secretly installed, and my compromised accounts, were being used to facilitate their fraud network. Opening bank accounts weren't just stealing my money. They were actively using my identity. My personal information, gleaned through the monitoring software they'd secretly installed, and my compromised accounts, to facilitate their fraud network. Opening bank accounts in my name, applying for credit lines, potentially signing documents, leaving a trail that could point directly back to me if their operation was uncovered. The nausea returned, worse than before. They hadn't just financially and emotionally wounded me. They were actively trying to incriminate me, to make me applying for credit lines, potentially signing documents, leaving a trail that could lead right back to me if their operation was uncovered. The nausea returned, worse than before. They hadn't just hurt me financially and emotionally. They were actively trying to frame me, to make me potentially legally liable, to implicate me in their crimes without my knowledge or consent. They didn't just steal my money, I managed to say, my voice thick with horror. They stole my name. They were trying to make me the fall guy. The brother, David, remained a painful, peripheral figure me in their crimes without my knowledge or consent. They didn't just steal my money, I managed to say, my voice choked, the words thick with horror. They stole my name. They were trying to make me the fall guy. The brother, David, remained a painful, peripheral figure in this deepening nightmare. Was he complicit? Emma's analysis of the transaction flows didn't link him directly to the complex laundering or the shell corporations, only to receiving substantial funds from our parents. It seemed he was either genuinely oblivious, enjoying the perks of his favored status without asking uncomfortable questions, or willfully deepening nightmare. Was he complicit? Emma's analysis of the transaction flows didn't link him directly to the complex laundering or the shell corporations, only to receiving significant funds from our parents. It seemed he was either genuinely oblivious, enjoying the perks of his favored status without asking uncomfortable questions, or willfully ignorant, choosing not to see the man behind the curtain as long as the money kept flowing. This made him less a knowing accomplice in the deeper fraud and more a primary, privileged beneficiary of their sprawling criminality, blinded by ambition and the narrative our parents had instilled in him his entire life. But I knew, with choosing not to see the man behind the curtain as long as the money kept flowing, this made him less a knowing accomplice to the deeper fraud and more a primary, privileged beneficiary of their sprawling criminality, blinded by ambition and the narrative our parents had instilled in him his entire life. But I knew, with a chilling certainty that settled deep in my bones, that he would side with our parents when the full truth came out. His image, his carefully constructed facade of success built on their money, depended entirely on their narrative remaining intact. Armed with the rapidly accumulating evidence, the undeniable logs showing the installation of monitoring software, and settled deep in my bones, that he would side with them when the full truth came out. His image, his carefully constructed facade of success built on their money, depended entirely on their narrative remaining intact. Armed with the rapidly accumulating evidence, the undeniable logs showing the installation of the monitoring software and remote access, the complex transaction trails pointing irrevocably to the shell corporations and their fraudulent network, the proof of identity theft using my documents, we began to see the true scale of their operation. It wasn't just dozens of transactions, it was hundreds, potentially involving millions of dollars, and, horrifyingly, the complex transaction trails pointing irrevocably to the shell corporations and their fraudulent network, the proof of identity theft using my documents. We began to see the true scale of their operation. It wasn't just dozens of transactions, it was hundreds, potentially involving millions of dollars, and, horrifyingly, impacting countless real people. Elderly individuals targeted by fake investment schemes, small businesses lured into fraudulent deals, families stripped of their savings. My parents, the pillars of community facade on Maple Lane, were predators preying on the vulnerable, to fund their lavish lifestyle and David's gilded path. And this is where the real people, elderly individuals targeted by fake investment schemes, small businesses lured into fraudulent deals, families stripped of their savings. My parents, the pillars of community facade on Maple Lane, were predators preying on the vulnerable to fund their lavish lifestyle and David's gilded path. And this is where the fake money twist fully solidified, explaining that strange, almost hysterical, laughter back in their house. Feeling that nagging unease from the initial computer glitches and the odd parental questions before the $250,000 vanished, I had acted on instinct, a whisper of intuition that something was wrong. It was a money twist fully solidified, explaining that strange, almost hysterical, laughter in their house. Feeling that nagging unease about the initial computer glitches and the odd parental inquiries before the $250,000 disappeared, I had acted on instinct, a whisper of intuition that something was wrong. It was a move born more of undefined paranoia than concrete proof, but it saved me. Weeks earlier, I had quietly, meticulously transferred the entirety of my $250,000 savings into a completely new, separate account at a different financial institution, one they knew nothing about and had no access to. The account they were monitoring, the one they thought held my life savings, was a decoy. It held a smaller, less significant balance, perhaps a few automated transfers scheduled to make it appear active, but less tempting for a full-scale theft. What they saw, and what they stole that day, wasn't my decade of sacrifice. Move born more of undefined paranoia than concrete proof, but it saved me. Weeks earlier, I had quietly, meticulously transferred the entirety of my $250,000 savings into a completely new, separate account at a different financial institution, one they knew nothing about and had no access to. The account they were monitoring what they stole was, based on the precise dates and amounts Emma tracked, money that they themselves had just funneled through my compromised account as a brief, hidden stop in the complex international laundering process of their own fraud network. They thought they were using my account to clean their dirty money or temporarily hide it. The one they thought held my life savings was a decoy. It held a smaller, less significant balance, perhaps a few automated transfers scheduled to make it appear active, but less tempting for a full-scale theft. What they saw, and what they stole that day, wasn't my decade of sacrifice. Believing my large savings balance would make the transaction inconspicuous. By stealing it, they didn't take my future. They took their own hot money, leaving a bright, undeniable digital trail directly from their larger fraud network back to them, channeled specifically through an account linked to me. The very person whose identity what they stole was, based on the precise dates and amounts Emma tracked, money that they themselves had just funneled through my compromised account as a brief, hidden stop in the complex international laundering process of their own fraud network. They thought they were using my account to clean their dirty money or temporarily hide it, believing they were simultaneously stealing. My near laughter in that moment was the pure, dark, ironic cosmic humor of it all. They thought they were so clever, so untouchable, robbing me with impunity, but they had walked right into a trap I had unknowingly helped set, providing the precise, irrefutable piece of evidence that would dismantle everything they had built on lies. They robbed their own trap. I repeated to Emma, the realization as terrifying in its implications as it was deeply, darkly satisfying. The decision now wasn't just clear, but imperative. This wasn't something I could handle alone, or confined to the realm of family issues. The fraud was too extensive, the number of potential victims too high, and my own legal exposure from the identity theft too real. We needed law enforcement. We needed justice. Not just for me, but for everyone else they had harmed. Working tirelessly with Emma, we compiled our evidence into a detailed, chronological dossier. Transaction records, IP addresses correlating the monitoring software access with the fraudulent activity, screenshots of the software interface accidentally captured, names of shell corporations, leads on potential victims identified through public records linked to the scam patterns. We consulted discreetly with the lawyer I'd initially contacted, an outside, objective voice who confirmed the strength and validity of our evidence. She advised us on the best way to approach authorities to ensure I wasn't wrongly implicated due to the identity theft. Given the scope of the financial network, which likely crossed state lines, the FBI was the appropriate agency. The days that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, recounting the painful story again and again, presenting the technical and financial evidence. The agents were initially cautious, as they should have been, but slowly, methodically, as Emma laid out the intricate digital breadcrumbs and I explained the family dynamics and the origins of the compromised account, their expressions shifted from professional neutrality to grim seriousness. They saw the network, they saw the laundering, they saw the audacious identity theft, they saw the depth of the betrayal, they saw the potential for numerous victims. The climax wasn't the dramatic courtroom showdown you see in movies. It was the cold, calculated arrival of justice. The agents worked quickly and quietly, building their case, securing warrants. They timed the exposure for a Tuesday morning, when my parents would both be present at the nondescript suburban office building they used as a legitimate appearing front for part of their operation. I wasn't present for the arrests, but Emma and I were nearby, waiting. The tension, a physical wire taut in my chest. The air felt thin, hard to breathe. I pictured the scene unfolding. The mundane office setting, the unexpected knock on the door, the sudden presence of federal agents displaying badges, the reading of rights. I learned details later, from case files and Emma's contacts. Their initial arrogance, the carefully polished facade of legitimate business people, dissolving instantly under the cold light of federal scrutiny. My father's face, moments before likely composed and confident, reportedly went ashen. My mother's carefully constructed composure shattered completely, her voice rising in frantic, nonsensical denials, casting blame erratically. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut, stark and final, echoing in the sudden, stunned silence. They tried to deny everything, then to bargain, then, sickeningly, even to try to shift some of the blame onto me based on the compromised accounts. A last, desperate act of manipulation rooted in their inability to accept responsibility. But the evidence, the undeniable trail of their own hot money flowing directly through my account, the logs from the surveillance software they installed on my computer, the forged documents using my identity, was overwhelming, irrefutable. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind. News of the arrests, initially a brief blurb in the local police blotter, quickly escalated as the magnitude of the financial fraud network became clear, picked up by regional and even national media outlets. My parents' carefully constructed public image, the perfect family on Maple Lane, imploded, the pieces scattered for all to see. Then came the social fallout, a second wave of pain. Phone calls from confused relatives, some sympathetic but many swayed by years of believing my parents' narrative, whispers in the community. And David, my brother, who had directly benefited from their crimes, reacted not with introspection or shame or concern for the victims, but with furious, self-serving denial and rage directed at me. He took to social media with a vengeance, painting a picture of a stable, respectable family destroyed by a troubled, ungrateful, jealous son making malicious, false accusations out of pure spite. He posted thinly veiled attacks, twisted facts, used the same language our parents had instilled in him his entire life, that I was somehow less deserving, less capable, and now actively malicious. He's trying to destroy us, he railed online, attempting to rally his remaining supporters, fanning the flames of public opinion. It was a painful, but ultimately illuminating, final act of betrayal, confirming his complete absorption into the family's toxic dynamic and his willingness to protect his own privileged position at any cost. The legal process ground on, a slow, emotionally draining period of hearings, procedural steps, and finally, preparation for trial or plea bargain negotiations. My parents, stripped of their public facade and facing the harsh reality of the justice system, looked haggard and aged. They showed little public remorse, still attempting to justify their actions or minimize their involvement. But the evidence, so meticulously compiled by Emma and me, held firm. My actual savings, the $250,000, remained safe, untouched, in the secure account I had moved it to. The money they had funneled through my account, the hot money they stole, was seized as part of the assets tied to the fraud case. Working closely with my lawyer and the authorities, providing documentation and clear testimony, I was able to successfully navigate the legal complexities, ensuring my name was cleared of any potential liability associated with the identity theft and the fraud network they had attempted to pin on me. It was a slow, painstaking process of disentangling myself from the toxic, criminal web they had woven, using my life as a thread. Reclaiming my reputation wasn't a single, dramatic announcement, but a deliberate, ongoing process, cooperating fully with law enforcement, calmly correcting misinformation when I encountered it, and ultimately, choosing to share my truth, to take control of my own narrative. The months stretched into a year. The legal proceedings reached their conclusion. My parents faced significant prison sentences, reflecting the scale and impact of their extensive financial crimes. Justice, in its cold, legal form, was served. There was no dramatic courtroom apology, no moment of reconciliation, nothing that provided a neat Hollywood ending to decades of dysfunction and betrayal. Just the grim pronouncement of consequences, the final, definitive legal boundary drawn between us. Emma remained a constant, a steadfast ally who had become more family to me than my blood relatives ever were. Our conversations weren't always about the past. We talked about our lives, our hopes, our shared experiences. Her presence was a quiet, unwavering comfort, a tangible reminder of what a healthy, genuine connection felt like. The most significant step in my personal journey of healing was finally buying my house. It wasn't the first one I dreamed of, the one I'd saved for during that lost decade, but it was mine. I remember the weight of the heavy key in my hand, the quiet click of the lock as I opened the front door for the first time, alone. The house was empty, the rooms echoing slightly, a blank canvas waiting to be filled. But it didn't feel lonely. It felt full of possibility, of safety, of peace. There were no oppressive family photos on the walls, no cloying artificial scents, just the clean smell of fresh paint and the promise of a future I would build on solid ground. It was my safe space, protected, a physical boundary I had fought tooth and nail, through unimaginable pain and betrayal, to establish for myself. The scars of betrayal remain. There's a part of me that will probably always be cautious, always double-check the details, always trust a little less readily. The grief of mourning the loss of the family I thought I had, even though that family was built on a foundation of lies and manipulation, is a dull ache that surfaces sometimes, particularly during holidays or when I see others with seemingly functional family connections. But it doesn't define me anymore. The $250,000 was just money. The freedom, the authenticity, and the hard-won peace I found were priceless. Toxic family dynamics are pervasive, insidious, and deeply damaging. They warp your perception of yourself and the world, erode your self-worth, make you question your own sanity. Setting boundaries isn't cruel or disrespectful. It's an essential act of self-preservation, a declaration that your well-being matters. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most, the ones who share your blood, are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But uncovering the truth, however painful or shocking, is the absolutely necessary first step toward healing and reclaiming your life. Standing up for yourself, even when your own family is actively trying to tear you down and smear your name, is an act of profound courage and self-love. I built my house, brick by brick, with years of sacrifice. But I built my new life on the foundation of truth, self-respect, and the courage to walk away from what was destroying me. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between your own well-being and maintaining a relationship with a toxic family? What finally led you to set a life-changing boundary?